Hi, today we're going to talk about stress and its effect on hormones. So, stress unraveled, how cortisol and the HPA axis shape your hormones. What you'll learn today, we'll talk about a discussion on the introduction of stress and cortisol, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis or HPA axis, we'll explain that, effects of cortisol on hormones and overall health, recognizing HPA axis dysfunction and strategies to manage stress and support the HPA axis. So my name is Jody. I'm a certified functional health practitioner and founder of Living Organically. I also have a master's in educational counseling. Back in August of 2024, I graduated from functional diagnostic nutrition with a certificate. But what brought me to become a functional health practitioner? Back in January of 2024, I was hospitalized for 5 days. I decided then that I would take my health back. As a trained counselor, it is my job to help others, and now it is my mission to help as many women as I can to gain their health and vitality back. So let's talk about your autonomic nervous system or your central nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system is the body's internal autopilot. It controls the range of essential functions like your heart rate, your digestion, respiratory rate, and even temperature regulation, all without needing us to consciously think about it. So it's a network that plays a huge role in stress response and homeostasis, which is balancing the body's internal environment. And our body always wants to be in balance. So we're going to talk about the two types of your central nervous system. It's sympathetic versus your parasympathetic. So let's break it down. Your sympathetic nervous system, so it's often called your fight or flight system, when it's activated, it triggers responses like increased heart rate, it increases stored glucose for energy, dilates airways to improve oxygen intake. So it is crucial for survival and short-term energy bursts. It's our sympathetic nervous system that jumps in. Back in the day when cavemen were around, if there was a tiger attack or anything that was threatening like that, that was our sympathetic nervous system jumping into action, taking flight. Either we need to run from the situation or fight the situation. So the other side of your central nervous system or your autonomic nervous system is your parasympathetic nervous system. So this one is known as your rest and digest system. So when it is dominant, it helps the body relax, recover, and conserve energy. It slows down the heart rate, promotes digestion, and generally supports repair and restoration processes in the body. It is essential for recovery from stress and maintaining balance in our bodily functions because, again, our body wants to be in balance. And it's very important for us to be able to balance our sympathetic nervous system with our parasympathetic nervous system. And in today's hustle and bustle, it's very difficult to be able to balance those. So here's stress. So stress is a state in which homeostasis is threatened or perceived to be so. Here's some examples: emotional, physical, psychological, environmental, and chemical. So the chemical stressors could be endogenous, which is in the body, or exogenous, outside of the body, toxins, environmental toxins, BPAs, glyphosate, phthalates, these kind of stressors. Or another cause of stress could be actual or anticipated or perceived stress. So we could be living in a situation that is highly toxic and creates tremendous stress in our lives, or it could also be that email that's waiting for you that is causing you stress and you're worried about. But not all stress is bad. So acute elevations of cortisol is considered adaptive, meaning our body can adapt short term and then go back to homeostasis. Eustress is good stress. It keeps the body guessing. Eustress can include exercise, having a baby, a sporting event, a wedding, traveling, starting a new hobby you love, etc. So here's the role of cortisol. Cortisol is called the glucocorticosteroid hormone. So cortisol is the stress hormone. It plays a key role in the body's stress response and is released in the adrenal glands. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Cortisol increases the function of survival by decreasing the functions of reproduction and digestion systems that are not needed for survival. So it increases glucose from the liver to send to the extremities to handle the threat in case we need to fight. So all that stored glucose goes to our extremities and gets us all excited to decide on what we got to do. It's when cortisol becomes chronic that it impacts the immune system, our inflammation, cardiovascular, our musculoskeletal, and our nervous system. So the HPA axis is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So the HPA axis is the body's central stress response system, also known as fight, flight, or freeze. So this response begins in the brain, the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus releases corticotropin releasing hormone, or CRH, to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland then sends out adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, to the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. And the adrenal glands then release cortisol into the body. So that's how the HPA axis contributes to the creation of cortisol and releases to the body. So according to the American Psychological Society, stress affects all systems of the body. So the HPA axis dysfunction. Each part of the axis works in a feedback loop to regulate cortisol levels. So with chronic activation can lead to HPA axis dysfunction. And there's 4 areas that we're going to look at: emotional, psychological, social. We're going to look at environment. We're going to look at physical and chemical. These are all stressors that affect the dysfunction or function of our HPA axis regulation. So here's some categories of HPA axis dysfunction. As we start with the emotional, psychological, and social, it could be work and a stressful work environment. It could be family, maybe family stressors. Our partner or marriage typically can contribute to HPA axis dysfunction. Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, friends, community, financial, and past trauma or current trauma can all affect our HPA axis functioning. Another category is environmental. So it could be the city of residence we live in. Maybe there's stress or toxins in the environment, in the city that we live in, a place of work, home, chemical toxicants as well in our environment that can affect our HPA axis dysfunction. Another category is physical. So it could be old injuries or current physical pain that we're in, or it could be sleep apnea. Totally contributes to dysfunction of our HPA axis if it's dysregulated. Another category is chemical. So chemicals could be in our bodies, endogenous or exogenous, the ones outside of our body. For example, pathogens. They upregulate inflammatory and immune response. Could be metabolic, whether it's blood pressure or blood sugar dysregulation. Medications can be a chemical that disrupts our HPA axis. Circadian rhythm dysfunction, microbiome dysfunction, and even our nutrient or electrolyte imbalances can definitely affect our HPA axis dysfunction. So let's define allostatic load. Allostatic load refers to the cumulative burden of chronic stress and life events. It involves the interaction of different physiological systems at varying degrees of activity. So when environmental challenges exceed the individual's ability to cope, then allostatic load overload ensues. So think of a volcano as it slowly builds. So allostatic load slowly builds and then the volcano erupts. This is what overload of allostatic load. So the cortisol pattern should increase within range in the morning, and it's called the cortisol awakening response. This also increases our blood glucose, which is normal. So cortisol should in the morning increase and then gradually decline throughout the day. So here's an example of an expected normal response. So upon awakening, it increases and peaks in the morning, and then gradually by noon in the evening, it decreases and declines, getting ready to rest. So negative feedback loop. So negative feedback loop for stress and cortisol is the body's way of regulating cortisol levels to prevent excess stress response. So the brain, the hypothalamus, detects stress and signals to the pituitary gland to release ACTH. ACTH travels to the adrenal glands, promoting them to release cortisol, which helps the body manage the stress, raising blood sugar, reducing inflammation. Once cortisol levels are sufficient, this is where the negative feedback loop can come in, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland detect that there's sufficient amounts of cortisol and reduce ACTH production. So signaling to the adrenal glands to slow down cortisol release. However, chronic stress can dysregulate this loop, leading to HPA axis dysfunction, where cortisol remains high or becomes depleted over time, contributing to fatigue, hormone imbalances, and inflammation. So this is an example of a low exhaustive response. So while low cortisol can be due to other factors, always remember that the negative feedback loop could be the issue. So see how it declines in the morning, it stays low, and then by the afternoon it increases. That's an inverted ratio of cortisol, and then declines again in the evening. This is a low exhaustive response, so the HPA axis is dysregulated. So effects of cortisol on hormones and overall health. So cortisol downregulates the basic everyday functions, the HPA axis or the HPO, which could be your reproductive function, which is your hypothalamus, pituitary to your ovaries, and upregulates the systems for survival. So it's not important for reproduction when survival takes precedent in the body. So it's called the pregnenolone steal. Cortisol disrupts hormonal pathways for sure. So what causes dysfunction? Other hormonal impacts due to dysregulated HPA axis. So chronic cortisol disrupts the thyroid hormones, insulin, self-regulating hormones like melatonin, sleep-regulating hormones like melatonin. Chronic cortisol suppresses the immune system as well, leading to increased susceptibility to illness. Blood sugar imbalances increases the risk of insulin resistance and digestive issues, since chronic stress can lower nutrient absorption, slows down hydrochloric acid release and enzyme release. So digestion is completely dysfunctional as well. So all of these cause stress to the body in some way. Strategies to manage stress and support the HPA axis. So there is hope. So to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, we want to rest and have consistent circadian rhythm consistency. So walking in nature helps. Other suggestions are grounding, forest bathing, therapy, all types, talk therapy, CBT, neurofeedback. We'll also assess for safety. So if we're in an environment or a situation that's unsafe, we want to get away from that situation, remove ourselves for safety reasons. Find reasons to laugh and have joy in your life. Find like-minded people to laugh with. Meditation, breath work, journaling, blue light blocking black glasses as well. We live in such an environment where we're constantly on the computer. And blue light blocking glasses really help because blue light stimulates the brain. Also, vagus nerve exercise is super important. So we can also consider supplement support, such as herbs, vitamins, there's nutrients and minerals are super important, electrolytes as well. Because with high stress, our body needs, our adrenals need high electrolytes and minerals to be able to function. Environmental support, so we want to have clean, chemical-free household products, clean, perfume-free body care products, air purifiers, sunlight on the skin. We want to get rid of all the environmental toxins as much as possible. Our body was never designed to deal with BPAs, phthalates, perfumes that are toxins, that are endocrine disruptors, and we definitely need to be introducing more clean products into our lives and onto our skin. And to take the stress response seriously. Super important. When our body's telling us we need to do things, we need to listen. So the vagus nerve, here's a little bit about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is incredibly important when it comes to promoting relaxation, reducing stress, and balancing the autonomic nervous system. So this article titled The Gut-Brain Axis and Cognitive Control, a role of the vagus nerve. So some ways that we can stimulate the vagus nerve is by deep diaphragmatic breathing, humming, chanting, singing, cold exposure, gargle with water for 30 seconds, progressive muscle relaxation, yoga and gentle movement, mindfulness, meditation, laughter, and social interaction all stimulate the vagus nerve. So if you're curious about your own unique roadmap to optimal health, ask me how to get started. I'm super excited about this. And as a functional health practitioner, I don't just hand over lab results. I'm here to interpret, guide, and help people make meaningful lifelong changes based on the lab findings. Cortisol is like your internal alarm system, and functional lab testing lets us see if your alarm is ringing too loudly or it's just not enough. So that's why like the Dutch test is super great. It tests for your cortisol levels throughout the day, 4 different times in the day. And so here's what you get if you work with me. You'll get 12 weeks of one-to-one Zoom sessions, functional lab tests, individualized wellness guides, weekly meal plans, and one-to-one chat support for 12 weeks. So the tests that I love to do, the functional tests include the GI-MAP, the Dutch test, and an HTMA test as well, hair tissue mineral analysis. And then if you decided to go the more functional medicine route, here's what what will cost. So by working with me, you'll save approximately $15,000 or more. So it'll be the fee of the functional medicine doctor, prescriptions that they potentially prescribe, therapy and counseling, random supplements, and no one-to-one support chat. So with me, you'll save $15,000. And your satisfaction is guaranteed with me. So if you do not see significant results of your symptoms by the time you graduate my program, and you've completed the steps recommended on your part, you'll receive weekly coaching until you are satisfied. So let's jump into some frequently asked questions that I get. So do I take insurance? Well, because I'm not a doctor and I cannot diagnose, I do not take traditional insurance. But if you have an HSA and funds that are yours, you can use that for my services. Some other questions that come up. How do I talk to my husband about this? Well, my husband is a fan of the following: firm, objective data. So the lab results are going to give us that. A plan and a happy wife. Another question that comes up often, what if I literally tried everything? I get it. You've tried dieting and exercising your way into sympathetic nervous system dominance. You've tried harder, but you have not yet tried different. What if I cannot afford this program? I used to think the same thing. It wasn't until I learned what my body truly needed. I gained the support that I needed to stay sober, lose inflammation and weight loss, and began listening to my body that I knew I wanted to help others. So knowledge is priceless, and I offer payment plans. So oftentimes I hear, how long will I see change? Well, everyone's different. Everyone's bio-individual, but most clients will see meaningful change within a week or two, given you're doing the protocol that's recommended. But hormones do take a little while. They take about 3 months to change, and weight will start to shift after you get out of your or your sympathetic state into parasympathetic. And so, thank you. I look forward to working with you, wishing you health and vitality. Please check out my website at livinginorganically.com. I'm also on Instagram at livinginorganically.jody. You can email me anytime, jody@livinginorganically.com. And feel free to call or text at 530-339-8358. Have a wonderful day.